going to talk a little bit about just contracts in general today, okay? And it's probably the biggest and most important thing, and particularly this kind of leads a little bit to the new brokers. I really promote the fact that you try to do your contracts, initially your first ones, and I can't say even at my old age, I'm still doing it this way, face to face. If you can do it face to face, there's a situation sometimes that you can't because they're out of town or whatever, and you see that more on the buyer side than you're seeing it on the listing side. But the point being behind it, and I know that we've gone over these contracts ad nauseum. A lot of you probably have already gone through it more than once because of the new updates and so forth that we've had. But there's a very good point of understanding those contracts. And when you have a face-to-face meeting with people, I think it makes you a better broker of explaining it. How many of you here, or you guys can shout out, have done a face-to-face contract agreement? Claudia has, Kelly has, Ray certainly has, Darlene has, okay?
I have.
Deb Nikita, I know she has. And Paula certainly has as well. What do you find the most troubling part when you do a face-to-face? And it's just between us family here. What do you guys find yourself struggling with when you do a face-to-face?
I've had the question come up about GRT.
Okay.
And they think that they have to pay the GRT on the total price of the home instead of on the service side.
Good. That is an excellent one. Really, Darlene, when I pitch it and I get to that one spot in the form, I say, you know, you're also going to have to pay GRT. Oh my goodness, what's that? As well, if you look at whenever you go to get services, if you go out and you hire yourself a plumber to come to the house, or if you have somebody who just did a new roof for you, those are all services you're paying. They don't really get to keep it. And notice the word I said, they don't get to keep that money. It just is transferred directly to the state of New Mexico for taxation. So any way you look at it, you're going to have to pay gross receipts tax for services. And oh, by the way, you'll also be paying gross receipts tax on my services. So if you know what the price is, and you know, let's say it's a $15,000, $15,000 commission between the two parties, then you do whatever it may be, the 8.4375% or wherever it is out in this county might be 7.64, and figure that number ahead of time. They may not like it, but it isn't money that is going to be in your pocket. Okay. So you always want to be able to be prepared. And I think that's where we always get in trouble. Hence the reason I really promote the fact if you can do it face-to-face, you're better off explaining these things to people of how that is. It's going to just make you a better broker on that. But that's always been a tough one. Years and years ago, man, we didn't do that. And it's not, but the rules change. The same thing happens with us with a lot of the other forms that we're now dealing with, okay? Another one that I find that people get stuck on is explaining, and let's just talk on the buyer side for a minute, of people saying, what's this ORW thing? I thought, I don't get it. Well, Mr. Buyer, you get an opportunity to go in and inspect the property. And in this heated climate of sales right now, I still advocate when you have that buyer to go for that ORW. Do not waive that. There are some occasions, but that's your way out. All right. And when you get to that ORW, be really diligent with your buyer and saying, look, what we're going to be looking at is the property in general. You're going to hire an inspector. Most recently, the things that I've been getting back or calls about is wow, they bought the house. My buyer just bought the house, Tom, and now they're doing renovations. They just took the ceiling roof off. And guess what? The joists up there, they weren't properly put in. What can we do? Well, first question I asked them is, well, how intensive an inspection did they have? Second part was, you as the buyer broker, how are you explaining the ORW? And how are you also explaining that you're not buying a brand new house? Too often we just let it slide by assuming, oh man, I'm not going to worry about the ORW. It's going to fall back on the seller. It can come back on you as well. And too often we just assume that whatever we sell people, we're not going to run into any problems. You have to be defensive in your thinking, because it can still come back at you. They could say, well, Claudia told me we probably didn't even need this inspection because it's a newer property. Really? Or, man, we didn't anticipate that there was going to be Kitech in the house after the fact. So you really have to make your buyer, talking on the buyer side, truly a partner with you and all the inspectors, so that at the end of the day, if something goes south, it does not come back at you and saying, well, so-and-so said I didn't need this, or I didn't understand this, and what's the deal? I'm working a big one right now. I'm hoping that we have been able to beat it down, of a $300,000 lawsuit that they have named the broker, the company, yours truly, the inspector, because when they purchased the house and they had an inspection, Kitech didn't show up. When they went to do renovations in the house, Kitech miraculously showed up. And they turned right around suing the broker, of saying, this broker should have known about Kitech. She walked by the utility room all this time. She should have known. She's an expert in the field. She's even written a column that says, beware of Kitech. Well, no, she's not a plumber. And you certainly don't go around with even the inspector to say, what kind of plumbing is that? It's not your business. So my strategy has been working with our attorneys now that this particular broker is not an inspector. How is it going to turn out? I don't know yet. I do know that we're going to land up being in front of the GAR grievance committee to prove our case that we're not. So my point being is that even if you have that buyer, you must be defensive as well, of saying, okay, let's think this out. This is an older house. Do we really need to get a plumber in here? Do we really need to, because nobody wants to pay the cost of the inspectors. Nobody wants to pay the extra cost for a roofer. Nobody wants to pay the extra cost for the plumber. But when they get that general inspection report and there's kind of red flags, at the very least, you need to ask your client, would you like to hire, do you want to hire somebody else to further investigate this? That's your hook. Because if they say, no, we're happy with it, that's your hook. And record that comment or put it in some email. So-and-so and so-and-so, I'm glad that you went through the report. And as you said, you are totally satisfied with the inspection report, because you don't want it coming back. Again, you can alleviate so much of this if you're actually having that one-on-one, face-to-face, let's sign the contract. Let me explain exactly what this means. New one coming up well these days as well, termination. Any of you guys ever have a termination agreement? Yeah. So the rules have changed to some degree. In the olden days, when I had hair on my head, there was just one agreement. And on that agreement, it was terminating. And on the lower half of it was distribution of funds. So you couldn't really do one without the other. Now they changed it to 2 agreements. And there's a new form, by the way, that you should be looking at, new termination agreement, that separates termination versus distribution of funds. Why did they do it? All right. Because we aren't party to the contract. So when all of a sudden somebody says, yes, I want to terminate, and they sign off on the termination agreement, yes, we're terminating, we're done. If you're the selling broker, that gives you the ability to go ahead and put it back on the MLS. In the old days, you couldn't do it because you hadn't settled on the funds of where the earnest money was going to go. So now they did. So that helped us as a listing broker, but it did not help us as a buying broker, because now we can't use that. You can't list that property until your client has paid the earnest money back. Can't do it. And we're seeing a lot like that. So when you are doing that purchase agreement, okay, or that part, both sides, you really want to explain that to your client. Look, yes, we're going to put earnest money down, but we need to perform all the way through the contract, because you have XYZ dollars on the table that you are going to perform. And that's what this earnest money is. It's performance money. Because if you go through the contract and then all of a sudden you say, yeah, I really don't want this house, you stand a very good chance on not getting your earnest money back. Well, I just won't terminate then. Good luck on that. So we're seeing it. I got a call this morning from one of our brokers that they were going to terminate the agreement. And the reason they were terminating the agreement is because the buyer didn't show up to closing yesterday. And they have the buyer. So Tom, do you think that we are going to be able to get their earnest money back? No. Good chance, no. Because in reality, they did not perform to their obligations. Well, make a long story short, well, at the very end of the day, they couldn't get the financing. What? You're going to closing and you're barely figuring out you can't get the financing? Really? How did you write this agreement? Well, we got part of it, and they had family members said they were going to loan them money and so forth like that. I said, well, 2 brokers are at fault here. First, the buyer's broker, because there's no guarantees. And secondly, the selling broker, because why in the hell would you even accept an offer when you have to rely on other outside sources without letters of intent? That will just kill you every time. So be careful that when you're talking to your clients, both sides of the deal, really explain to them about terminating an agreement. It's just not something, you've got a real live active contract, and they've got to understand it's a real live active contract that you're working with. And you can't just be flippant and say, well, I just want to terminate. Okay, well, you can terminate, but be ready to lose your earnest money. It's a potential. It's a possibility. Okay, questions about terminations, or people's run into their own nightmares with it? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to, so with termination, if you're following the dates, especially with your financing, then you should be okay. However, I did have one termination recently. The other agent, the listing agent, was saying, well, the seller wants to keep it. And I said, well, they didn't get their financing, so I don't see how he could keep it, because per the contract, right?
Right.
So that did not create an issue, because, I pretty much, stopped that one from going further. So,
And Fateh, if I can jump in there,
yeah,
because you were following your deadlines. And
yes.
so there is leniency in there when you cannot meet your financial criteria for the contract, but you were following the contract. I can't tell you, just in this deal that I was talking about, we're now talking the day before. They missed their deadlines a long time ago.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
that's again, those dates are critical in your contract. You guys heard me at nauseum. You've been on enough of the calendar class to understand, what a pain in the ass I am about making sure those numbers are correct. Go ahead, Fate.
Yeah, but I had one more thing, just as you were talking before. So you've got two separate, you've got the termination, you've got the earnest money distribution. Let's say the seller will sign the termination, but doesn't want to sign the earnest money distribution, but yet that termination can go right into the MLS. It could go back on the market, I'm assuming, right?
That's correct.
And then the earnest money has to get worked out. So in other words, the earnest money doesn't prevent it going back on the market.
Right. And that was, trust me, I argued that one until I was blue in the face with Ashley, because of course, I was on the other side of the deal going, I want my money. And they're saying, no, it wasn't me, but one of our brokers.
Mhm.
And really what it was is it did not allow the selling broker to pursue fair trade commerce. And the money part of it, again, isn't us. It's between the seller and the broker, seller and the buyer.
And the buyer, yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, that's where that all changed. And saying, which really, as I said, as a buyer, really puts you at a disadvantage. Okay. If you're trying to pull out without real strong cause. So the line here is when you're talking to your clients, doing one-on-one with them, you say, is this really the house you want to buy? Because, we're going to get in it and you're going to put some scratch in the game. They may not want to put a lot of money after that, but they're going to put some. And, if something goes south, are you capable of walking away from your $10,000 earnest money?
Good. That's a good question. Yes.
Yeah. Let me think of the other ones. Other questions you guys have on the contract? I had them written down here, but go for it.
Isn't there a clause in the purchase agreement that addresses the financing contingency? Back to Fate's point.
Yes.
That is a contingency pretty much. I don't think contractually you can hold somebody to perform if they're not granted the funding for their loan.
That is correct. You are correct on that. And that's where I say, that's where the deadlines, Deborah, pay off. It's, if you have a window of time that says, minimum of 7 or 8 or 10 days before closing, that the individual cannot get the loan, then you have viable opportunity to say we're terminating based on the fact they couldn't get the loan. And if you check box off, the money will be returned to the buyer, is crucial. You pass those deadlines. Now we have a contract, and guess who that monkey's going to fall on your shoulders, because you weren't paying the deadlines. So, and we do it. And I say it sincerely, because I've been a broker too. Yeah, everything's fine. I've got the best, I've got Annette, or I've got Sandra doing the loan. I'm not worrying about it. And before you know it, you've passed that date. And then you do your Hail Marys. Oh man, I better check to see if they got the money. Because if I miss that date, it's on my neck that I missed that date by not communicating to one of the lenders of saying, hey, are they good? So you're right, Deborah, on the fact that we do have that contingency base there. But my concern is making sure that you're following that calendar to the law. Okay. What was the other one? Oh, I got one. Contingencies. We all know that. And I had a smile this morning because Ray said something that I had been dreaming about a long time ago in the team meeting, that Tommy Flood says that the contingencies are going to be a thing of the past. Really. What he was really referring to was contingent selling another property. I don't know how that's all going to work out, but in my mind, contingencies are still very, very alive and well. And we are still seeing properties being purchased on contingencies. We've had a very good class on that. And the thing you guys got to always remember is not even the house being purchased on a contingency of the buyer. but you're really dealing with the contingency of that buyer who is the seller of their property. You don't even know who that player is. So I've had one recently that was too deep. Contingent upon condition of buying this property. You talk about doing a lot of prayers to make that work because you don't have real solid ground on that. So be very, very, very careful with contingencies. I'm a great believer that contingencies, particularly in this market as hot as it is, I would only consider doing a contingency based on a closing date. In other words, the people are going to be selling their house. They're closing their house next week, and we're going to buy their house in a month. I'm all over that. That's fine because you know there's that room in there. But the truth be said is that contingencies are a little risky, but always look at a closing date versus saying, you know, how the form says, has the buyer already put their house on the market? If they said no, that's like a red flag for me. I'm going, really? You haven't even put your house on the market. And you're here in Santa Fe. You want to buy $1 million house based on the fact that you're going to sell your house in Lubbock for the same amount? Nah, not going to happen. So just be aware of that. And when you've got you're presenting it to your seller, saying the buyer is in, they may be all excited. Oh my God, they gave us above offer price. Let's do it. Well, wait, whoa. Let's back up a little bit because it's contingent on them selling their house in Lubbock. Well, Lubbock's pretty hot. Okay, maybe that's works fine. But just be a little bit more cautious of those kind of little easy ones. We get excited about selling our properties. I get it. But at the same time, those are the things that will, you know, drive you crazy. Okay. Had one yesterday. They're going to close the house. And no, she put an offer on the house, put an offer on the house. Yeah, I had this last night. I take it back. And she called me in a panic because she was the buyer's agent. They got this house. They're ready to go. They're ready to close. Everything's good. With the exception, they couldn't get an appraisal done in a timely manner. What can I do, Tom? Well, I guess you can write an extension because at no fault of ours or the title company or the lender are we able to dictate a lot of the stuff that we are having with the appraisers. Same thing's happening with the lenders. They're backed up. And so like even now in Santa Fe, I think the appraisers are pretty close to out to 2 to 3 weeks. So if you're still writing a 30-day closing date, first thing you need to make sure is when you're talking to that lender on who's ever with the property says you already have your appraiser lined up. And she couldn't understand it. She's from California originally as a broker, you know, and she was kind of bad mouthing New Mexico. I said, you know what? This is everywhere. This is just not New Mexico. So appraisers can trip you up. So, you know, that's that. As you get better and better and better in the business, you begin to start seeing all these shortfalls. All I can do is give you ahead of advance warnings of these things. Meaning, again, to follow the premise of this class, meaning that's why these one-on-ones are very important with your clients. You know, do not just allow them to sign off on the contracts and saying, oh, you know what? That's great. Darlene's got a handle on it. Suzanne's got it. I don't worry about it. It's all good. At the very least, if you're doing stuff outside of them being local, there's this wonderful new tool called Zoom. And if you hadn't, I think it's still free accounts, Ted. I can't recall if they still get a free account.
You can do a free account in a 40-minute meeting.
Yeah. So get an account, get your own, aside from the fact of what we have at the office, because there is nothing better than communicating to these people and say, okay, I've sent you the contract and I've sent you, and what I do, I send them only a PDF and I can see you can print the PDF and we're going to go through the contract. And if you're good with everything, then I'll send you the electronic version and you can just click, 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 click. Okay? And follow it up with an email saying, we've gone through the contract and now I'm sending it to you electronically for your signatures. I know that I sound overly conservative, maybe apprehensive, maybe even a little fearful. But, sitting in this chair, I see a lot of things that just, boy, I know immediately what happened. And then 9 times out of 10, it's just communicating to your clients and having that face off with them as well. Yeah,
Tom, I share a few thoughts,
please, Deb.
piggyback off what you're saying from my past experience too. The concept, like I'm going to present an offer today to one of my customers, and she's not super tech savvy, even less tech savvy than I am, so that's pretty low bar there.
You're getting good, though, Deb. You're getting good.
I'm getting there. But I think going a little deeper on this topic of the face-to-face, when you meet face-to-face with your customers to get signatures, it really does two things. It really pronounces the fact that you are indeed working for them. You're not just shuttling papers from your command central keyboard, which doesn't really look like you're doing much work, I think. And I think when you take the time to connect with your clients, they see that value added of what you're really doing to advocate for them on their behalf. And by getting the signatures with them in person, you avoid the risks, especially on super important topics like earnest money terms, inspection terms. You have the chance to really slow down and emphasize the top 5 issues that go sideways, or the top 3 or 4 issues that go sideways throughout the course of escrow. So to me, when I've received click through this, adopt a signature, I pick a fancy signature and just click, 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 click. What am I really clicking? And I'm doing it on my iPhone, so I can't even see the words, let alone the nuance and the context of what I'm agreeing to and what important points, each person has what's important to them, but there are 3 or 4 that we all know are most important things. And one is on both sides, the listing and the purchase side, the return of earnest money and the inspections and the contingencies. So I'm a very strong advocate for the face-to-face, even if they click through. In fact, with this particular deal that I'm presenting tonight, I sat down with her and we clicked through it
Good.
together after presenting it.
Good. Excellent, Deb. No, that's so, and of course, Deb and I worked so close together over the years here as well. You guys know that, we've always kind of had each other's back. And the reality is that she's a good broker. She's now doing it full time like the rest of you guys. So, thank you, Deb, for being on these programs. It's great. Let me ask you guys now, in terms of your comfort now with DocuSign. Any comfort levels? Darlene, no comfort level? Robert Roblato, comfortable or not?
I'm still using Dotloop.
Okay.
And I use Instanet.
All right. Well, as I told you guys, I'll never forbid anybody from using whatever form because I'm working through it. But it isn't that difficult. I'm going to share my screen here with you guys real quick. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. And I'll give you like a quick little tutorial, as you guys know, on my website, wherever it is. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Can you see my QB corner there, guys? Or which one are you on? Yeah. If you go to this one, probably the easiest one here, wherever it is, DocuSign 201. Take a peek at that sometime. And like I've told you, if you can do 2 computers, it's good, and just play with it. All right. But the basic one here is just simply sign in to your command and try it. Don't be afraid of it. Let's let this baby line up. Here we go. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. That's the sad thing about this. The little handshake over here. See a little handshake, guys, right? That's the collaboration center. I like it because all that handshake means that let's make a deal. You're making a deal, let's shake on it. So you click on that little guy. It will open up. And in this case, I'm going to go, this would be a buyer. If you were going to do a new deal, if you were going to do a new deal, you see right up there where it says create opportunity. That's where you click on it. And you would simply put in the information there. Now, since I have one, because everybody wants to know where the forms are, I'm going to cancel that for a minute. I'm just going to all opportunities. And I'm going to go down to my Bob test listing because that's the one I have it. These are deals. This is, I already created that first button, created these things here. So it opens up to Bob test. It's a listing. And if you just go to the documents, it's already there. You ultimately would be going to go to the transaction. DocuSign opens up with your email and so forth, and your password. And here are all the ones that I had originally in there, right? These are the new forms. But let's just say I just wanted to add one. There you have it. DocuSign forms. Woohoo. The key is this. You see on the libraries, I have GUARD, KW there. The New Mexico Association of Realtors is the one that you want to find all your forms in. You click on that, and lo and behold, here's every form you've ever dreamed about to have. And if you open it up, I don't want to go too far beyond this. I'll just open that up as an occupancy agreement. Let's see where it is.
So they haven't upgraded that so that when you click on the buyer documents, it doesn't download all the buyer documents you possibly could need?
No,
Bummer.
no. Well, there's other means of how from us that you can go there on the SFAR one. You know, we're working through that as the statewide QBs if we're going to do it or not. There is argument that you as an individual can create your own folder to have that information in for your own, versus us of exposing ourselves as QBs as saying these are what you need to have. Okay, just FYI. So there's the form. And that's as far as I'm going to show you guys today, because I think that it isn't that difficult to do it. It's just taking the time and say, hey, I'm going to learn how to do the thing. And as I told you guys before, you can go back to my Tom Trujillo real estate, and there it is, DocuSign 201. I found this one here to be the easiest to work through. It's about an hour long. So if you're going to actually fill out a form or so through this, set yourself 2 hours aside to play with it. Okay. When we get back to people coming into the office, I will be holding seminars on DocuSign, but it's so difficult doing it this way. The last thing that I'll talk to you guys about today as well is this is the New Mexico Association forms update. You should have gotten an email from New Mexico Association of Realtors on all the new updates, which includes the new escalation addendum, the counter offer, which is a brand new form to an escalation, a market condition advisory form, a termination, earnest money consent to distribution forms, a buyer sales contingency form, and the new property disclosure statement that we were calling for a while, the adverse materials. They've gone back to property disclosure because most brokers could not understand the difference. And the only change on that is the name of the form, okay? So as good responsible brokers, and I talked about it today as well on the team meeting, so I don't want to drive you all crazy on it, is take a look at that. Make sure that you guys have an understanding of those forms. So as we start going through these individual forms to one-on-one with them, you'll have a little better handle on understanding those, okay? All right, so headaches, nightmares, issues, we got a 3 o'clock again today. So, you know, I'm pretty burned out right now, but I'm here for you guys, you know that. And if you got a question or anything that we need to answer as a group, I'll be happy to answer.
I'm writing an escalation clause tonight.
Ah, how
So
fun.
it doesn't look like much has changed from the other form.
It hasn't, they cleaned it up a little bit, you know, now that there's some numbers and they really have outlined the fact of, you know, what's your top number, okay? So all it was is pretty much cleanup, Darlene. If you looked at it, it's not that much, but you should look at it. And if you haven't looked at that update there that Ashley puts out, it's the first one. So you don't have to go through all of them. So you might want to take a peek at what she has to say on it as well. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Any other questions?
I've got a quick one on a PDF that I received as an offer when I review it in person with my client.
Uh-huh.
What do you think about wet signatures and then PDF scanning it back versus trying to upload it and do radio buttons?
I love it all day long, Deb.
Okay.
I mean, 9 times out of 10, that's what I would do, particularly when I was at Quail. Most of my clients, you know, that's how they sign stuff. So print it out. You know, I even go through it at some point and use even the little yellow highlighter so I can remember as well as them. Oh, you need to sign this, this, and this. Then I would just upload it as then make another PDF. And you know, if you're working with a TC, just have them upload it into compliance. It works fine. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys, love you all. Maybe I'll see you at 3 o'clock or not, but I'll be there. Okay.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
thanks a lot, Tom, and congratulations on your recognition. These
Oh,
are the kind
thank
of
you.
things that
Yeah,
got you.
that was very nice. That kind of surprised me. I mean, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? That's my job, right? But it was always nice to get a little recognition that I'm trying to help you guys. Woohoo, let's all make money. I love it.
You're above and beyond. We'll see you at 3.
See you, buddy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Bye-bye.